You are listening to HOA Consequences. The paper trail was messy and still undeniable. Your file says repeat offender. Christine Smith threw the words at me like she was reading a criminal record, standing under the eave of my porch while drizzle misted down around us. She had her portable thermal printer in one hand and that ridiculous tiny body camera clipped to her white light jacket, the red recording light blinking like a threat. I held up the folded printed page with my highlights and stayed calm, because I knew what she did not. I had been digging into the cold case that started this whole mess, and I was about to prove she had been running a scam on Pinecrest Village HOA for years. It started 3 weeks earlier when I got a notice claiming I had missed a mandatory hearing about my property. The problem was simple. I never received notification of any hearing. I work as a shipping clerk, so I keep receipts, signatures, and tracking numbers for everything. I checked my logs. Nothing. No certified mail. No email. No door hanger. I called the HOA management office and they told me Christine Smith handled compliance enforcement directly, and she had documented my no-show as willful non-compliance. The fine was $600, due in 10 days, or they would file a lien. I was trying to sell the house. A lien would kill the deal. I drove to the management office that afternoon and asked for the hearing notice records. The property manager, a tired-looking woman named Denise, pulled up the file and frowned. She said the notification was logged as hand-delivered on October 4th. I asked who delivered it. She checked the notes and said Christine Smith personally confirmed delivery. I asked for proof. She said Christine used her own tracking system, and the management company relied on her documentation. I asked if I could see the original complaint that triggered the hearing. Denise hesitated, then printed a single-page violation report. It was dated September 28th and listed my address with a vague complaint. Failure to maintain exterior appearance per community standards. Section 12.3 of the bylaws. I read it twice. Section 12.3 did not exist in the version of the bylaws I received when I bought the house 2 years ago. I told Denise that. She said the bylaws were updated at the annual meeting in May, and all homeowners were sent revised copies. I said I never got a revised copy. She said Christine handled distribution, and it was logged as complete. I asked for a copy of the updated bylaws. Denise printed them. I flipped to Section 12.3. It was a brand new rule about seasonal decorations, and it did not apply to anything on my property. I told Denise that. She said I would need to appeal the fine at the next board meeting, which was 3 weeks away. I said the fine was due in 10 days. She said I could request an extension, but it required board approval, and Christine would need to sign off. I left. I called an attorney that night. He told me HOA disputes in Maine followed very specific procedures, and if the HOA failed to follow proper notice requirements, the fine could be challenged. He said it would cost me $1,200 up front to file a formal appeal, and he could not guarantee success. I thanked him and hung up. I decided to handle it myself. I started digging into the Pinecrest Village HOA history. I joined the neighborhood Facebook group and searched old posts. That was when I found the cold case. 2 years ago, a homeowner named Bill Ramos had posted a long rant about a mysterious towing incident. His car had been towed from his own driveway in the middle of the night with no warning, and when he called the HOA, Christine Smith told him he had parked in violation of the overnight guest parking rule. Bill said he lived there, and it was his assigned spot. Christine said the spot had been reassigned during a maintenance project, and he had been notified. Bill said he was never notified. The thread went on for 30 comments. Bill posted photos of his tow receipt and his original parking assignment. Other neighbors chimed in. A woman named Sandra mentioned she had also been towed under strange circumstances. Another guy said he got a fine for a fence that was not his. Then the thread went quiet. I scrolled down and found one final comment from Bill a week later. The board had agreed to mediation, and he was dropping it. No follow-up. No resolution. Just silence. I messaged Bill directly. He responded the next morning. He said the mediation went nowhere because Christine brought a binder full of documentation proving she had followed procedure, and the board sided with her. He said he paid the tow fee and the fine because fighting it was going to cost more than the total. He said he moved out 6 months later. He told me to be careful because Christine keeps files on everyone and she will bury you in paperwork. He said one more thing before he logged off. Check the meeting minutes from that year. He said something did not add up, but he never had time to prove it. I went to the HOA website and downloaded 2 years of board meeting minutes. I printed them all and started reading. Most of it was boring procedure, landscaping bids, pool maintenance, budget approvals. Then I found the October meeting minutes from 2 years ago, right after Bill's towing incident. The minutes listed a vote to update the parking enforcement policy. The vote passed 4-1. The dissenting vote was labeled as board member Patricia Vega. I kept reading. 3 months later, the January minutes listed Patricia Vega as absent. The February minutes listed her as resigned. No explanation. I searched for Patricia Vega online and found her LinkedIn. She still lived in Portland. I sent her a message. She called me 2 days later. She said she remembered Bill Ramos and she remembered the vote. She said she voted against the parking update because Christine had presented the proposal at the last minute with no advance notice and no supporting data. Patricia said she asked Christine where the complaints were coming from, and Christine said she had received multiple verbal complaints from concerned residents. Patricia said she asked for names. Christine said the complaints were confidential to protect the residents from retaliation. Patricia said that was not how the process was supposed to work. The board president at the time, a man named Gerald, overruled her and called the vote. Patricia said she knew something was wrong, but she could not prove it. She resigned because she did not want her name attached to whatever Christine was doing. I asked Patricia if she kept any records from her time on the board. She said she kept everything. I asked if I could see them. She said yes. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Portland the next afternoon. She brought a cardboard file box. Inside were printed emails, budget spreadsheets, and copies of old meeting minutes. She pulled out a folder labeled October Board Meeting and handed it to me. Inside was a printed agenda. The parking policy update was not on the agenda. Patricia said Christine added it during the meeting under new business. I asked if that was allowed. Patricia said technically yes, but it violated the usual practice of giving board members time to review proposals. She said Gerald let it slide because Christine was his compliance officer and he trusted her. I asked Patricia if she had the original minutes from that meeting. She said she had her personal notes but not the official version. I showed her the official minutes I had downloaded from the website. She read them and her face went tight. She pointed to a line halfway down the page. The official minutes said the parking policy update had been discussed at the prior meeting in September and tabled for further review. Patricia said that was a lie. There was no discussion in September. She said she was at that meeting and she would have remembered. I asked if she had proof. She flipped through the file box and pulled out another folder labeled September Board Meeting. Inside was another printed agenda. There was no parking policy item listed. Patricia said the official minutes had been altered. I asked when the minutes were usually finalized. Patricia said they were supposed to be approved at the next meeting, so the October minutes would have been approved in November. I asked who wrote the minutes. She said the property management company provided a recording secretary who took notes during the meeting and typed them up afterward. I asked who reviewed them before posting. Patricia said Christine reviewed them as part of her compliance role, and the board president signed off. I asked if anyone ever checked the recordings. Patricia said, "What recordings?" I said, "Did the management company record the meetings?" She said they used to, but Gerald stopped that practice 6 months into his term because he said it was unnecessary and cost extra. I asked when Gerald's term ended. She said he served 2 years and termed out. I asked who is president now. She said a woman named Laura Chen. I asked if Laura knew about any of this. Patricia said she doubted it. Laura was new to the board last year, and she probably trusted Christine the same way Gerald did. I asked Patricia if she would be willing to talk to the board. She said she would if I could prove the minutes were altered. I said I would try. I thanked her and left with copies of her files. That night I went back to the HOA website and looked at the October minutes again. I opened the document properties. The file was created on November 9th, 2 years ago. I checked the September minutes. Created October 7th. That matched the timeline Patricia described. Minutes were finalized and posted after the following meeting. I opened the October minutes in a text editor and searched the metadata. The last modified date was March 15th, 6 months after the original creation date. Someone had edited the file. I checked the other years. Most files had a creation date and no modifications. 3 files had modification dates months after posting: October 2 years ago, April last year, and August this year. All 3 involved policy changes Christine had proposed. I saved screenshots of the metadata and printed them. I had the start of a case. I needed more. I went to the county clerk's office the next morning and requested copies of any HOA-related documents filed for Pinecrest Village. The clerk searched the system and printed 3 items: the original incorporation papers, an amended set of bylaws filed in May last year, and a lien filing from August. I paid the copy fee and left. I sat in my car and read the amended bylaws. They matched the version Denise had given me. The filing date was May 12th. I checked my records. The annual meeting was May 7th. Bylaws amendments required a homeowner vote at the annual meeting. I did not remember any vote about bylaws. I checked my email. I found the annual meeting notice. It listed 3 agenda items: board elections, budget approval, and landscaping contract renewal. No bylaws amendment. I drove back to the management office and asked Denise for a copy of the annual meeting minutes from May. She printed them. I read them in the lobby. The minutes listed a bylaws amendment vote under new business. The amendment passed by majority vote of attending homeowners. I counted the votes listed: 43 in favor, 12 against. Pinecrest Village had 208 homes. 55 voters was barely a quorum. I asked Denise if proxies were allowed. She said yes. I asked how many proxies were submitted. She checked the file and said 31. I asked who collected the proxies. She said Christine Smith managed the proxy process as compliance officer. I asked for copies of the proxies. Denise said they were not kept on file after the meeting. I asked why not. She said it was Christine's policy to shred them after the vote was certified to protect homeowner privacy. I went home and called Patricia again. I told her what I found. She said proxy votes were supposed to be kept for at least 1 year per Maine nonprofit corporation law. I asked if she knew a lawyer who handled HOA cases. She gave me a name, Marcus Reed. She said he had handled a case against a different HOA in South Portland and won. I called Marcus that afternoon. He listened to my summary and said it sounded like a pattern of procedural violations and possible fraud. He said if I could prove the minutes were altered and the proxies were mishandled, I could file a complaint with the Maine Attorney General's office and request an audit. He said it would take months and I would need solid evidence. He said his retainer was $1,500. I said I would think about it. I decided to set a trap. I drafted a records request under Maine's Freedom of Access Act and submitted it to the Pinecrest Village HOA. I requested copies of all meeting minutes from the past 3 years, all proxy forms from the past 2 annual meetings, all violation notices issued to my address, and all email correspondence between Christine Smith and the property management company regarding my property. I sent it certified mail with return receipt. I got the green card back 4 days later. The HOA had 7 business days to respond. On day 6, I got a call from Christine. She said the records request was overly broad and burdensome, and I needed to narrow it. I said the request was specific and reasonable. She said some of the records contained confidential homeowner information and could not be released without board approval. I said meeting minutes and my own violation notices were public records. She said I was misinterpreting the law. I said I was happy to let the Attorney General's office clarify. She hung up. On day 8, I got a packet in the mail. It was thin. Inside were 3 pages, a copy of the hearing notice Christine claimed she hand-delivered, a copy of the violation report I already had, and a printed email from Christine to Denise saying the matter was closed pending my appeal. No meeting minutes, no proxies, no correspondence. I scanned the hearing notice. It was dated October 4th, the same date Christine claimed she delivered it. The notice listed my address and a hearing date of October 9th at 6 p.m. at the community clubhouse. I checked my calendar. October 9th was a Tuesday. I was working an evening shift that day, and I had my time card to prove it. I scanned the notice again and saw something odd. The notice listed the violation as Section 12.3, failure to maintain exterior appearance. But Section 12.3 did not exist until the bylaws were amended in May. The notice was dated October 4th, before the amendment. It was impossible. I called Marcus Reed. I told him what I found. He said it was a smoking gun. He said the notice was either backdated or forged, and either way, it was evidence of fraud. He said I should file a complaint with the Attorney General and request an emergency stay on the lien filing. He said it would cost me $3,000 to pursue. I said I would do it myself. I went to the Pinecrest Village Community Facebook group and posted a message. I said I had evidence that HOA meeting minutes had been altered and violation notices had been forged. I said I was filing a formal complaint and I was looking for other homeowners who had similar experiences. I listed my email and phone number. I posted it at 8 p.m. By midnight, I had 12 messages. Sandra, the woman who mentioned the towing incident in Bill's thread, messaged me first. She said her car was towed 2 years ago from a visitor spot and Christine told her she had parked in a reserved spot. Sandra said the spot was not marked as reserved, and she had photos to prove it. She said Christine showed her a map of the parking lot with reserved spots marked in red. Sandra said the map did not match the physical lot. She said she paid the fine because fighting it seemed impossible. She said she still had the photos and the map Christine gave her. A man named Kevin messaged me next. He said he got a fine last year for a fence that extended 6 inches past his property line. He said he had the property surveyed and the fence was completely within his boundaries. He said Christine told him the survey was wrong and the HOA used a different survey company. Kevin said he asked to see the HOA survey. Christine said it was not available. Kevin said he paid the fine because he was refinancing his mortgage and could not risk a lien. He said he still had his survey report. A woman named Janet messaged me and said she got a violation notice for an unapproved exterior paint color. She said her house was painted the same color it had been for 15 years, and the color was on the HOA approved list. She said Christine told her the list had been updated and her color was no longer compliant. Janet said she asked for a copy of the updated list. Christine said it was not finalized yet. Janet said she repainted her house to avoid a fine. She said it cost her $4,000. She said she was furious. The messages kept coming. Every single person had a story about Christine moving goalposts, citing rules that did not exist, or producing documentation that contradicted reality. Every single person had paid the fine or complied because fighting the HOA felt hopeless. Every single person still had their records. I created a shared folder and asked everyone to upload their documents. By the end of the week, I had 23 files: photos, emails, violation notices, receipts, and surveys. I organized them into a spreadsheet. I cross-referenced the violation notices with the meeting minutes. 3 notices cited rules that did not exist until months after the notice was issued. 5 notices cited section numbers that were blank in the old bylaws. 2 notices had creation dates in the file metadata that were weeks after the printed date on the notice. Christine had been backdating and forging notices for at least 2 years. I sent the spreadsheet and the files to Marcus Reed. He called me the next day and said it was the cleanest case of HOA fraud he had seen in a decade. He said I had enough evidence to file a complaint with the Attorney General, request a forensic audit, and possibly press criminal charges. He said he would take the case on contingency if I agreed to let him represent the group. I said yes. Then Christine showed up at my door. It was a Thursday evening, 6 days after I posted in the Facebook group. I heard the knock and opened the door. Christine stood under the eave with her portable thermal printer in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Her tiny body camera was recording. She said she was conducting a compliance inspection and I was required to allow access to my property. I said no. She said refusal to comply was a violation of the bylaws and would result in an automatic fine. I said, "Show me the bylaw." She flipped through the clipboard and pointed to a section. I read it. The section allowed inspections with 48 hours written notice. I said, "You did not give me notice." She said she sent an email. I said I did not receive it. She said that was my problem. I said no, it was hers. She printed a violation notice on the spot. The thermal printer whirred and spit out a slip of paper. She handed it to me. It listed a fine of $400 for refusal to allow inspection, due in 10 days. I read it twice, and then I looked at her. I said, this is the third time you have tried to find me in 3 weeks, and none of it is legitimate. She smiled and said, Smile. I am documenting this for the file. I said, good. I pulled out my phone and started recording. She said, you cannot record me without my consent. I said, you are on my property and you are wearing a body camera, so I think we are even. Her smile disappeared. I said I filed a records request 3 weeks ago, and you only sent me 3 pages. She said the request was overly broad. I said it was specific. She said I was wasting HOA resources. I said I was exercising my legal rights. She said if I kept harassing the board, she would recommend escalating enforcement action. I said, what does that mean? She said it meant additional fines, restricted access to community amenities, and possible legal action. I said, you are threatening me. She said, no, I am informing you of consequences. I asked her about the October meeting minutes from 2 years ago. She stiffened. I said the official minutes say the parking policy update was discussed in September, but the September minutes do not mention it. She said I was misreading the documents. I said no. Someone edited the October minutes 6 months after they were posted. She said that was absurd. I said I have the metadata. Her face went pale. I said I also have copies of backdated violation notices, including 3 that cite bylaw sections that did not exist when the notices were printed. She said I was making false accusations. I said, prove me wrong. She said this conversation was over. She turned and walked to her car. I called after her. I said I am filing a complaint with the Attorney General's office, and I have 23 other homeowners who are joining me. She stopped, turned back, and said, go ahead and call whoever you want. I have a committee for that. Then she got in her car and drove away. I watched her taillights disappear, and then I went inside and called Marcus. I told him what happened. He said Christine just made a critical mistake by threatening me on camera. He said we should file the complaint immediately and request an emergency hearing. I said, do it. Marcus filed the complaint the next morning. The Maine Attorney General's office acknowledged receipt and said they would review the submission within 30 days. Marcus also filed a motion with the county court requesting a temporary restraining order to stop Pinecrest Village HOA from issuing new fines or filing liens against any of the homeowners in the group until the investigation was complete. The hearing was set for 2 weeks out. Christine did not wait. 3 days after Marcus filed the motion, a tow truck showed up in my driveway. At 7 a.m., I heard the diesel engine and looked out the window. The truck was backing up to my car. I ran outside in my hoodie and yelled for him to stop. The driver, a middle-aged guy with a clipboard, got out and said he had authorization from the Pinecrest Village HOA to tow my vehicle for unpaid fines. I said I am disputing those fines in court. He said he did not care about court. He had a work order. I said, show me the authorization. He handed me a printed form. It was on Pinecrest Village HOA letterhead with Christine's signature at the bottom. It listed my address, my car, and a tow fee of $350. I said this is retaliation, and it is illegal. He shrugged and said take it up with the HOA. I said I am taking it up with you. I pulled out my phone and dialed the tow company's main office. The dispatcher answered, and I said I had a driver at my property attempting to tow my car based on an authorization that is currently under dispute in court, and I need a supervisor on site immediately. The dispatcher said, hold on. I put the call on speaker. The driver heard it and backed away from my car. He said he was not getting in the middle of a legal fight. I said, good choice. The dispatcher came back and said she needed to verify the authorization with the HOA before proceeding. She said she would call me back. I said I would wait. The driver stood by his truck and checked his phone. I stood by my car and kept recording. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was the dispatcher. She said she spoke with Christine Smith, and Christine confirmed the authorization was valid. I said Christine Smith is the subject of a fraud investigation, and her authorization is not valid. The dispatcher paused. She said she was not aware of any investigation. I said, check your email. My attorney sent you a notice yesterday. She said she had not seen it. I said, then I suggest you check before you proceed, because if you tow my car under a fraudulent authorization, you are going to be named in the lawsuit. She said, hold on again. The driver got a call on his cell. He listened, nodded, and hung up. He said the company was putting the tow on hold pending legal review. I said, thank you. He said, no problem. He dealt with HOA drama all the time. He got in his truck and left. I called Marcus. I told him what happened. He said Christine was panicking and making mistakes. He said the tow attempt was evidence of retaliation, and we could use it at the hearing. He said, keep documenting everything. That afternoon, Christine posted a message in the Pinecrest Village HOA Facebook group. She said there were rumors circulating about HOA enforcement practices, and she wanted to set the record straight. She said all enforcement actions were conducted in full compliance with the bylaws and Maine law. She said some homeowners were spreading false information to avoid accountability. She said the board took violations seriously and would continue to enforce the rules fairly. She said homeowners with concerns should contact her directly. She did not name me, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Janet responded first. She posted a photo of her repainted house and said she spent $4,000 to repaint a color that was on the approved list because Christine told her it was not compliant. Sandra posted next. She posted a photo of the parking lot map Christine gave her and said it did not match the actual lot. Kevin posted his survey report and said his fence was within his property lines despite Christine's claim. One by one, the homeowners in the group posted their stories and their documents. The thread exploded. By the end of the day, there were over 100 comments and Christine had deleted her original post. But screenshots lived forever, and I had saved everything. The next morning, I got a call from Laura Chen, the board president. She said she wanted to meet with me to discuss the situation. I said I was happy to meet, but my attorney would be present. She said that was fine. We scheduled a meeting for the next afternoon at the management office. Laura showed up with Denise and 2 other board members. Marcus came with me. We sat in a conference room, and Laura said she had reviewed the complaint and the documents I submitted. She said she was not aware of the extent of the issues with Christine's enforcement practices. She said the board took the allegations seriously, and they were conducting an internal review. I said an internal review was not enough. Marcus said the Attorney General's office was already investigating, and the court hearing was in 10 days. Laura said she understood. She asked what it would take to resolve the matter. Marcus laid out our terms. First, all fines issued to me and the other homeowners in the group had to be rescinded immediately. Second, the HOA had to agree to a full forensic audit of all meeting minutes, violation notices, and proxy votes from the past 3 years. Third, Christine had to be suspended from all enforcement activities pending the outcome of the audit. Fourth, the HOA had to agree to mediation with a neutral third party to establish new enforcement procedures. Laura looked at the other board members. They nodded. She said the board would vote on it at an emergency meeting the next evening. I said one more thing. I said I wanted the meeting recorded, and I wanted a copy of the recording. Laura hesitated. Marcus said it was non-negotiable. Laura agreed. The emergency board meeting was held the next night at the community clubhouse. 50 homeowners showed up. Christine was there, sitting in the front row with her clipboard and her portable thermal printer on the chair beside her. She was wearing her tiny body camera. Laura called the meeting to order and said the board had received a formal complaint regarding enforcement practices, and they were voting on a resolution. She read the terms Marcus and I had outlined. Christine stood up and said the allegations were false and politically motivated. She said I was a disgruntled homeowner trying to avoid accountability. She said the board should reject the resolution and proceed with enforcement. Laura said the board had reviewed the evidence and the allegations were credible. Christine said, "What evidence?" Laura said altered meeting minutes, backdated notices, and mishandled proxies. Christine said that was a lie. Laura said the metadata does not lie. Christine's face went red. She said the board was undermining her authority and she would not stand for it. Laura said the vote was not about authority, it was about accountability. She called the vote. 4 board members voted yes. 1 abstained. The resolution passed. Christine grabbed her clipboard and her printer and walked out. The room was silent. Laura said the board would begin the audit immediately and they would provide regular updates to the homeowners. She said Christine was suspended from enforcement activities effective immediately, and all homeowners with pending fines would receive written notice of the rescission within 5 business days. She said the board was committed to transparency and rebuilding trust. The meeting ended. I walked out of the clubhouse and saw Christine standing by her car in the parking lot. She was on her phone, yelling at someone. I kept walking. Marcus caught up with me and said it was a good outcome, but we still needed to follow through on the audit and the court hearing. I said I knew. He said Christine was not going to go quietly. I said I was counting on it. The court hearing was 8 days later. Marcus filed an amended motion that included the tow attempt, the Facebook post screenshots, and the board meeting recording. The judge read the filings and said it was one of the clearest cases of HOA overreach she had seen. She granted the temporary restraining order and scheduled a follow-up hearing in 60 days to review the audit results. Christine did not show up to the hearing. Her attorney said she was unavailable. The judge was not amused. If you are enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmare tales. The audit took 6 weeks. The firm Laura hired found 27 altered meeting minutes spanning 3 years, 41 backdated or forged violation notices, and 63 proxy votes that could not be verified because the original forms had been destroyed. The firm also found that Christine had issued over $200,000 in fines during her tenure as compliance officer, and only 30% of those fines were paid. The rest were written off or forgiven after homeowners moved out. The firm concluded that Christine had systematically abused her authority to generate revenue for the HOA and to punish homeowners who questioned her. Laura called another emergency board meeting and presented the findings. She said Christine's actions had exposed the HOA to significant legal liability, and the board needed to take immediate action. She recommended terminating Christine's role as compliance officer, banning her from holding any future board positions, and issuing a formal apology to all affected homeowners. She also recommended that the board refer the matter to the Maine Attorney General's office for potential criminal prosecution. The board voted unanimously in favor. Christine did not take it well. She showed up at the meeting and demanded to speak. Laura said she was not allowed to address the board because she was no longer an officer. Christine said the bylaws gave her the right to speak during homeowner comment periods. Laura said the bylaws also prohibited officers under investigation from participating in board business. Christine said the investigation was a sham. Laura said the audit was conducted by an independent firm, and the findings were clear. Christine said the board was conspiring against her. Laura said the meeting was adjourned. Christine refused to leave. Laura called the police. 2 deputies arrived 10 minutes later. Christine was still yelling in the parking lot. One of the deputies recognized her. He said he had responded to a noise complaint at her house 6 months ago, and she had threatened to report him for harassment. He smiled and said it was nice to see her again. Christine said she was a victim of a conspiracy. The deputy said she needed to leave the property, or she would be charged with trespassing. Christine said she was a homeowner, and she had a right to be there. The deputy said the clubhouse was private property, and the board had the right to ask her to leave. Christine said this was not over. The deputy said it was for tonight. She got in her car and left. The Attorney General's office opened a criminal investigation 2 weeks later. They interviewed Laura, Denise, Patricia, and 12 of the affected homeowners, including me. They subpoenaed Christine's emails and phone records. They found evidence that Christine had colluded with a former board president, Gerald, to manipulate votes and enforce policies that benefited their personal interests. They also found that Christine had received kickbacks from the tow company for every vehicle towed under HOA authorization. The tow company cooperated with the investigation and provided receipts showing over $18,000 in payments to Christine over 2 years. Christine was charged with fraud, forgery, and theft by deception. Gerald was charged as an accomplice. Both pled not guilty. The trial was scheduled for the following spring, but I did not wait for the trial. 3 weeks after the charges were filed, I got a call from Christine's attorney. He said Christine wanted to settle. He said she would agree to repay all fines issued to me and the other homeowners in the group, resign from the HOA permanently, and drop all counterclaims in exchange for me agreeing not to testify at the criminal trial. I said no. He said Christine was willing to pay an additional $10,000 to make the case go away. I said no. He said I was being unreasonable. I hung up. 2 days later, Christine showed up at my house again. It was pouring rain this time, not just drizzle. She was soaked. She did not have her thermal printer or her body camera. She said she wanted to talk. I said no. She said please. I said get off my property. She said she made mistakes, and she was sorry. I said you are sorry you got caught. She said she lost everything. I said you stole everything. She said she had a family. I said so do the people you hurt. She said I was ruining her life. I said no, she ruined it herself. She started crying. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the fake hearing notice, the tow truck in my driveway, the 23 families she had scammed, and Bill Ramos, who moved out because fighting her was too expensive. I closed the door. The HOA held a special election 3 weeks later to fill the board positions vacated by Christine and Gerald. 5 new members were elected, including Patricia Vega, who came out of retirement to help rebuild trust. The new board voted to hire a professional management company to handle all enforcement activities and to implement a transparent appeals process for homeowners. They also voted to refund all fines issued under Christine's tenure and to post the audit report on the HOA website. Laura stayed on as president. She said the HOA had a long road ahead but she was committed to making it right. I sold my house 4 months later. The buyer's lender required an HOA disclosure, and I was able to provide a clean report showing no liens, no pending violations, and no unresolved disputes. The sale went through without a hitch. I moved to a condo in South Portland with no HOA. I had never been happier. But the story was not over. 6 months after I moved out, Marcus called me and said Christine had changed her plea to guilty. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all affected homeowners. Gerald got 12 months and probation. The tow company lost its contract with Pinecrest Village and was fined $50,000 by the state for kickback violations. Marcus said it was a good outcome. I agreed. Janet repainted her house back to the original color. Sandra got her tow fees refunded with interest. Kevin never had to pay his fence fine. Bill Ramos sent me a message on Facebook and said he wished he had fought harder. I told him he did what he could, and I was glad I could finish what he started. I stayed polite, because polite makes bullies careless. Christine thought she could intimidate me into silence, but every time she escalated, she gave me another piece of evidence. Every fake notice, every altered minute, every backdated document was another nail in the coffin she built for herself. She thought documentation was her weapon, but it became mine. The trump card I had been holding was simple: a records request response revealing the HOA altered the minutes after the meeting. Patricia had given me her September board meeting notes, and they did not match the official minutes posted online. The official minutes said the parking policy update had been discussed and tabled in September. Patricia's notes showed no such discussion. I confirmed it with the file metadata showing the October minutes were modified 6 months after posting. I did not reveal that detail to Christine until the end, and I only showed it after Karen repeated her claim one last time, on record, at the emergency board meeting. That was when Laura read the audit findings out loud and Christine's whole story collapsed. The funny karma moment came during the board meeting when Christine tried to shame me in front of the 50 homeowners who showed up. She said I was a disgruntled homeowner trying to avoid accountability and that I was spreading false information. Then Janet stood up from the back row and said, "Actually, Christine, I have the receipt for the $4,000 paint job you made me do, and the color is still on the approved list." Sandra stood up next and said, "And I have the parking lot map you gave me that does not match the actual lot." Kevin stood up and said, "And I have the survey that proves my fence is legal." One by one, neighbors fact-checked Christine in real time. Her face went from red to white. She grabbed her clipboard and walked out. The HOA agreed to mediation with a neutral third party, and Christine was ordered to stop contacting me directly. Those were the exact consequences laid out in the settlement terms. Christine violated the order twice, which is why the restraining order got extended and why the criminal charges stuck. The payback vector was simpler than I expected. I did not have to do much. Once the audit revealed the kickback scheme with the tow company, the HOA's insurance carrier got involved. The carrier sent a risk warning to the board saying that continued association with Christine or Gerald would result in coverage being dropped. The board panicked. Insurance was not optional. They cut ties with Christine immediately and referred everything to the Attorney General. The insurance company did the heavy lifting. Christine's tiny body camera, the one she wore to intimidate people and document violations, ended up being her biggest mistake. She recorded herself saying things she should not have said, including the line, "Go ahead and call whoever you want. I have a committee for that." That line showed up in the audit as evidence of her belief that she was untouchable. The body camera footage also caught her printing fake violation notices on the spot with that portable thermal printer. The thermal printer became a recurring prop in the case. Every time Christine showed up to intimidate someone, she brought that printer. Investigators found blank rolls of thermal paper in her car with preloaded templates for violation notices. She had been mass-producing them. The twist came when Marcus was going through the audit documents and found the same template notice in 12 different homeowner files. The template had identical formatting, identical spacing, and identical typos. Christine had been printing notices from a master file and filling in names and dates by hand. She was not even trying to hide it. She just assumed no one would compare notes. When Marcus presented the template stack to the board, you could see the moment they realized how deep the problem went. It was not a few bad enforcement calls. It was a factory. The final showdown happened in a courthouse hallway on a Thursday morning. I was there for the follow-up hearing on the restraining order. Christine was there for her arraignment. We ended up in the same hallway outside the courtrooms, waiting for our cases to be called. Her attorney tried to keep her away from me, but she walked over anyway. She said I had ruined her life, and she hoped I was happy. I said I was not happy. I was just done. She said the board had conspired against her, and the audit was rigged. I said 27 altered minutes and 63 fake proxies are not a conspiracy, they are evidence. She said I did not understand the pressure she was under trying to keep the neighborhood functional. I said functional neighborhoods do not run on fake violations and kickbacks. Her attorney pulled her away before she could say anything else. A deputy standing nearby had been listening carefully. He stepped between us and asked if there was a problem. I said no. Christine said yes. The deputy asked what the problem was. Christine said I was harassing her. The deputy looked at me. I showed him the restraining order. He read it and looked at Christine. He said, "Ma'am, it says here you are not supposed to contact him." She said I did not contact him. He was standing in the hallway. The deputy said you walked over to him. She said he provoked me. The deputy said, "I am going to need you to wait in a different area." She said this was a public hallway. The deputy said, "Not anymore." He escorted her to the other end of the hall. She glared at me the whole way. My case was called first. The judge reviewed the audit findings and extended the restraining order for another year. She said Christine's behavior demonstrated a pattern of retaliation and harassment, and the order was necessary to protect me and the other affected homeowners. Christine's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Case closed. Christine's arraignment was called next. I stayed to watch. She pled not guilty again, but her attorney requested a delay to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecutor said the state was not interested in a deal unless Christine agreed to full restitution and a felony conviction on at least one count. The judge set a trial date for the following April and warned Christine that any further violations of the restraining order would result in immediate jail time. Christine nodded. She did not look at me as she left the courtroom. I walked out of the courthouse and checked my phone. I had 3 missed calls from Laura Chen. I called her back. She said the board had just voted to formally censure Christine in public, strip her of all committee powers, and ban her from contacting homeowners outside official meetings. She said the vote was unanimous, and the censure would be posted on the HOA website and mailed to every homeowner in the community. She said it was the strongest action the board could take short of expulsion, and she wanted me to know they were serious about accountability. I thanked her. She said I had done the neighborhood a service, and she was sorry it took so long for the board to act. I said better late than never. She agreed. The criminal trial happened in April, just like the judge scheduled. I was subpoenaed to testify. I brought the folded printed page with my highlights, the metadata screenshots, and the records request response. I spent 2 hours on the stand walking through the timeline, the fake hearing notice, the tow attempt, the altered minutes, the proxy fraud, the kickback scheme. The prosecutor asked if Christine had ever expressed remorse. I said no. The prosecutor asked if I thought Christine understood the harm she caused. I said I did not think she cared. The defense attorney objected. The judge overruled. Christine took the stand in her own defense. She said she had been trying to protect property values and maintain community standards. She said the HOA bylaws gave her broad enforcement authority, and she had exercised that authority in good faith. She said the audit was flawed, and the charges were politically motivated. The prosecutor asked if she had altered the October meeting minutes. She said no. The prosecutor showed her the metadata. She said she did not understand computers. The prosecutor asked if she had received payments from the tow company. She said they were reimbursements for administrative costs. The prosecutor showed her the bank records. She said it was a misunderstanding. The prosecutor asked if she had forged violation notices. She said no. The prosecutor showed her the template stack. She said someone must have framed her. The jury was not convinced. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found Christine guilty on all counts: fraud, forgery, theft by deception, and conspiracy. Gerald was convicted as an accomplice. Christine was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Gerald got 12 months. Both were ordered to pay restitution totaling over $90,000 to the affected homeowners. The judge said their actions had betrayed the trust of the community and undermined the integrity of the HOA system. She said the sentence was intended to send a message that HOA officers are not above the law. Christine cried during sentencing. Her attorney asked for leniency, citing her age and her lack of prior criminal record. The prosecutor argued that Christine had shown no remorse and had continued to lie under oath. The judge sided with the prosecutor. Christine was remanded into custody immediately. I watched the bailiff lead her out of the courtroom in handcuffs. She did not look at me. I left the courthouse and drove back to South Portland. I stopped at a coffee shop and called Marcus. I told him it was over. He said it was a good outcome and I should be proud. I said I was just relieved. He said the restitution checks would be processed within 60 days, and I could expect to receive a full refund of all fines plus interest. I said thank you for everything. He said it was his pleasure, and if I ever needed help with another HOA, I should call him. I laughed and said I did not plan to live in another HOA ever again. He said smart choice. The restitution check arrived 8 weeks later. It was for $1,400, covering the hearing fine, the tow attempt fee, and interest. I deposited it and paid off the last of my legal expenses. The other homeowners in the group got their checks around the same time. Janet used hers to repaint her house again, this time back to the color she wanted. Sandra framed her check and posted a photo in the neighborhood Facebook group with the caption "Justice." Kevin bought a new fence just because he could. Patricia Vega served 2 terms on the Pinecrest Village Board and helped rewrite the enforcement procedures to include mandatory notice requirements, recording of all meetings, and annual audits. She said the new system was not perfect, but it was a massive improvement. Laura Chen stayed on as president, and became known as the board president who cleaned up the mess. Denise, the property manager, got a raise and a formal apology from the board for having to deal with Christine's chaos for so long. She said it was the best apology she had ever received. The tow company lost its contract and got fined. The dispatcher who helped me during the tow attempt sent me a thank you card. She said my call had triggered an internal investigation at the company, and they had discovered Christine was not the only HOA officer running a kickback scheme. The company implemented new verification procedures and cut ties with 3 other HOAs in the Portland area. She said I had probably saved the company from a bigger lawsuit down the road. Bill Ramos reached out one more time after the trial. He said he read about the conviction in the Portland Press-Herald, and he wanted to thank me for finishing what he started. He said he had moved to New Hampshire and was living in a house with no HOA, no bylaws, and no compliance officers. He said it was the best decision he ever made. I told him I understood completely. Christine served 14 months of her 18-month sentence and was released on parole. She moved out of state. I heard she went to Florida. I did not follow up. I did not care where she went as long as it was far away from me. The orange cone that kept getting knocked over near the curb became a running joke in the neighborhood. Someone finally bolted it to the pavement. Every time I drove past Pinecrest Village to visit friends, I saw that cone and smiled. It was a small thing, but it felt like a victory. The case became a teaching example in Marcus Reed's HOA law practice. He said he used the Pinecrest Village case to show clients what happened when enforcement went unchecked and homeowners failed to organize. He said the key lesson was documentation and persistence. He said Christine thought her documentation made her untouchable, but it was the same documentation that buried her. He said bullies rely on intimidation, but intimidation only works if people stay silent. He said I had refused to stay silent, and that made all the difference. I ran into Laura Chen at a grocery store in Portland about a year after the trial. She said the HOA was doing well and the new enforcement procedures were working. She said violations were down, compliance was up, and homeowner satisfaction had improved significantly. She said the board had voted to install security cameras at the clubhouse and the pool to prevent future misconduct. She said it was expensive, but worth it. She asked how I was doing. I said I was great. She said she was glad. We talked for a few more minutes and then went our separate ways. It felt good to have closure. The cold case was closed. The missing money was recovered. The forged paperwork was exposed. The suspicious towing was explained. The altered minutes were corrected. Christine and Gerald were convicted. The HOA was reformed. The neighborhood moved on. But the lesson stayed with me. I learned that authority without accountability is just bullying with paperwork. I learned that moving goalposts is a tactic to exhaust opponents, and the only way to beat it is to document every move. I learned that public shaming only works if the person doing the shaming has credibility, and credibility evaporates the moment the lies are exposed. I learned that witnesses matter, and third parties who see the abuse firsthand are often the best evidence. I learned that traps work best when the target does not know they are walking into one. I also learned that revenge is not about destruction. It is about accountability. I did not destroy Christine. She destroyed herself. I just made sure everyone could see it. The restitution was not about the money. It was about recognition that harm had been done and needed to be repaired. The criminal conviction was not about punishment. It was about consequences. Christine spent years abusing her authority, and she finally paid the price. The thing that stuck with me most was how many people stayed silent, because they thought fighting was hopeless. Bill Ramos gave up because he could not afford to fight. Janet repainted her house because she was scared of a lien. Kevin paid the fine because he was refinancing. Sandra paid the tow fee because she did not know her rights. Every single one of them had evidence, and every single one of them thought they were alone. It was only when I posted in the Facebook group that people realized they were not alone, and that collective realization made the case possible. Christine's catchphrase, "Smile, I am documenting this for the file," became her downfall. She thought documentation gave her power. She thought the files proved she was right. But documentation cuts both ways. Every fake notice she printed, every altered minute she posted, every backdated envelope she mailed became evidence of fraud. She documented her own crimes and then acted shocked when those documents were used against her. That was the irony. She was so confident in her authority that she never considered she might be caught. The boomerang line was even better. "Go ahead and call whoever you want. I have a committee for that." She said it to me on my porch, and she said it again in the Facebook group, and she said it a third time at the board meeting. Every time she said it, it reinforced the idea that she was untouchable. But the committee she relied on was the board, and the board turned on her the moment they saw the evidence. The line that was supposed to intimidate me became proof of her arrogance. Marcus played a recording of her saying it during the trial, and you could see the jury react. It was the moment they realized she believed she was above the rules. The portable thermal printer became iconic. Christine used it to print violation notices on the spot, and she thought it made her look official. But the printer was also her smoking gun. Investigators found the master template files on her laptop, and they matched the notices she had been printing for 2 years. The printer became a symbol of her entire scheme: fast, cheap, and fake. During the trial, the prosecutor held up the printer and asked Christine if she recognized it. She said yes. He asked how many notices she had printed with it. She said she did not remember. He said the audit found over 200. She said that sounded high. He showed her the thermal paper receipts. She had no response. The tiny body camera she wore was supposed to protect her from false accusations. Instead, it captured her making threats, lying about procedures, and printing fake notices. The footage became Prosecution Exhibit A. Christine's attorney tried to argue that the camera footage was taken out of context, but the prosecutor played full clips that showed Christine saying things like, "You are required to allow access to my property," and refusal to comply is a violation of the bylaws. And this conversation is over when challenging Ed with evidence. The context did not help her. It made things worse. The intermittent drizzle that kept forcing everyone under the eave became a recurring backdrop. Every confrontation seemed to happen in bad weather. The first time Christine showed up at my door, it was drizzling. The second time, it was pouring. The tow truck scene happened on a gray, overcast morning. The courthouse hallway was dry, but the walk to my car afterward was in freezing rain. It felt symbolic. The weather was miserable and relentless, just like Christine. The tow operator who hesitated when I demanded authorization became an unexpected witness. His name was Ray, and he testified at the trial that Christine had called him directly and bypassed the normal dispatch process. He said Christine offered him a $100 tip if he towed the car quickly and did not ask questions. He said he refused because it sounded shady. The prosecutor asked why he showed up at all. Ray said he thought the authorization was legitimate until I challenged it. He said when I called the dispatcher and asked for verification, he realized something was wrong. He said he dealt with HOA tow requests all the time, and they usually followed a standard process. Christine's request did not. His testimony corroborated my version of events and proved Christine was acting outside normal procedures. The secondary prop, the orange cone knocked on its side near the curb, showed up in so many photos that it became a visual motif. It appeared in the background of the first confrontation. It appeared in the tow scene. It appeared in the courthouse parking lot photo someone took of Christine leaving in handcuffs. It was always there, always knocked over, always a reminder that the neighborhood was a mess. When someone finally bolted it down after the trial, it felt like a symbolic restoration of order. The neighborhood itself, described as a place where curb appeal matters more than reality, was the perfect setting. Pinecrest Village looked pristine. The lawns were manicured. The houses were painted in approved colors. The mailboxes matched. But underneath the surface, the HOA was rotten. Christine had turned enforcement into a revenue scheme and a power trip, and the board had enabled her because they did not want to deal with the complaints. It took an outsider, me, to force them to look at what was really happening. Once they did, the whole facade collapsed. The stakes were real. I was trying to sell the house, and Christine was threatening disclosures and liens that would kill the deal. That was not abstract. That was my financial future. Every day the case dragged on was another day I could not move forward. The time pressure was real too. Christine claimed the fine schedule was changing at the first of the month, and the deadline was the next day. She was using artificial urgency to force me into compliance. I ignored the deadline and called her bluff. It worked. The escalation was methodical. First, Christine issued a fake hearing notice, claiming I missed a hearing I was never told about. That was escalation step 1. Then she tried to tow my car after I put her on notice to stop. That was escalation step 2. Each step raised the stakes and forced me to adapt. The hearing notice was a paper threat. The tow attempt was a physical threat. The progression showed that Christine was willing to escalate as far as necessary to win. But every escalation also gave me more evidence. The side complication, Christine posting cropped screenshots in the group chat and neighbors believing the crop, was frustrating but realistic. People see what they want to see, and a cropped screenshot can tell any story. Christine posted a photo of my car with a caption claiming I was parked illegally. She cropped out the part of the photo showing the curb markings that proved I was in a legal spot. Some neighbors believed her. It was not until Sandra posted the full, uncropped photo that the truth came out. That moment taught me that context matters, and assumptions are dangerous. Patricia Vega, the former management company employee who recognized the scheme, was the ally I needed. She had the receipts. She had the meeting notes. She had the institutional memory. Without her, I would have been guessing. With her, I had proof. She risked nothing by helping me, but she also gained nothing except the satisfaction of seeing Christine held accountable. She did it because it was the right thing to do. That mattered. The twist, discovering that the same template notice appeared in multiple files and proved someone was mass-producing fake violations, was the turning point. Up until that moment, I thought Christine was sloppy. The twist revealed she was systematic. She was not making mistakes. She was running a factory. That realization changed everything. It meant the problem was not isolated incidents. It was institutional fraud. It meant the solution could not be a slap on the wrist. It had to be prosecution. The evidence type, a third-party report flagging accounting or enforcement irregularities, was the audit. The evidence reveal, playing the clip in the meeting so Karen could not talk over her own voice, was the moment Christine lost control of the narrative. She had been talking over people for years, dismissing objections and reframing facts. The recording took that power away. She could not argue with her own words. She could not reinterpret her own threats. The tape was the tape, and the tape destroyed her. The trump card, a records request response revealing the HOA altered the minutes after the meeting, was the final piece. I held it until Christine repeated her claim one last time, on record, at the emergency board meeting. She said the parking policy update had been properly discussed and tabled in September, and the October vote was just a formality. Laura read the audit findings, and I showed the metadata proving the October minutes were modified 6 months later. Christine's face went blank. She had no response. That was the moment the board turned on her. That was the moment I won. The trump card tease, I stayed polite because polite makes bullies careless, was my strategy from the start. Christine expected me to yell, to threaten, to lose control. I did not. I stayed calm. I documented everything. I asked polite questions. I made polite requests. Every time she escalated, I responded with patience and paperwork. It frustrated her, and frustration made her sloppy. She printed notices without thinking. She altered minutes without covering her tracks. She threatened me on camera. She thought politeness was weakness. It was not. It was strategy. The showdown in the courthouse hallway was not planned, but it was fitting. Christine and I ended up in the same place at the same time, both there for hearings related to the same case. She could not resist confronting me one last time. She said I had ruined her life. I said she ruined it herself. That was the truth. I did not invent the fake notices. I did not alter the minutes. I did not take kickbacks from the tow company. I did not mass-produce violations. She did. I just made sure people knew. The deputy who stepped between us was the same deputy who had responded to Christine's trespassing incident at the clubhouse. He recognized her, and he recognized the pattern. He told her to stay away from me, and when she tried to argue, he escorted her to the other end of the hall. That was the last time I saw her in person. She glared at me the whole way, but she did not say another word. The deputy's intervention was proof that even law enforcement could see through her act. The final board vote to censure Christine in public, strip her committee powers, and ban her from contacting homeowners outside official meetings was the official end. The HOA had finally taken responsibility. The board had finally acted. Christine was done. She had no authority, no credibility, and no future in Pinecrest Village. The censure was posted on the website and mailed to every homeowner. Everyone knew what she had done. There was no hiding. There was no spinning it. The records were public. The conviction was public. The consequences were real. The outcome was everything I wanted. Christine was held accountable. The HOA was reformed. The affected homeowners were made whole. Justice was served. It took time. It took effort. It took persistence. But it worked. The system worked, eventually when enough people refused to stay silent. I appreciate you spending your time with me, and I will be